How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I've heard a lot of good things. I was reading actually through your questionnaire, and you said you were a teacher for 22 years?
Yes.
22 years this year, or is that
This
22
is
and a
my
half?
22nd year in the classroom. Yes. I started in
That's
2000, but I took 2 years off with my oldest son that's 19 now.
Oh, wow. Does it ever get easier? I have three of my own. No.
It's actually, honestly, in particular since COVID, it's actually getting harder. So I would say
Yeah.
that for the most part, I would say that generally 10 or 12 years ago, teachers probably enjoyed like the daily part of it more.
Yeah.
And of course, I mean, we wouldn't still do it if it wasn't something that you had a passion about.
Yeah.
But as far it really does continue to get more and more difficult. So
Yeah. Well, I again, reading through the questions that you'd sent, I think that we're kind of all in the same boat a little bit, where we don't know where teaching is going. It's kind of in flux, and it seems like it's all over the place. I found a statistic here that was interesting. In 2014, it was 3.4% of the United States was homeschooled, and in the course of 10 years, that's doubled. And if we keep that up, that's going downhill for teachers.
well, and I
right?
think I know because I saw on the global page that and when Emily and I were talking, she said 11% are homeschooled, and
Yeah.
that's not. And I would love to know. I mean, a huge portion of kids going to school are moving to private school, at least
Yeah.
here in North Carolina. And I'm a public school teacher, and I send my child to a private school now.
Well, and that says a lot, right?
That's not something that I wanted to do. And I kept him here at my school all through elementary school because it's wonderful,
Yeah.
and I know what's going on, and I can kind of be, aware of what's going on. But once it was time for middle school, I was like, no.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. It's because you can keep tabs on it. Being a parent of three myself, it's a lot of the reason me and my wife are looking at homeschooling right now. And we're actually looking at micro schools and the co-op schools.
Okay.
The security, our kids are at school for 6 hours a day, and we have no idea what's going on there.
That's a big part of it.
The scary, this year especially, we don't know if they're coming home, and that's not something parents should have to deal with. That's crazy.
It is. What area
so
are you? Where are you?
So I'm up in Connecticut,
Okay.
in Simsbury, Connecticut. So it's a great area, and it's, I think I'm lucky enough to not have such a high risk of certain things, but we even said middle school is the time here even that it's homeschooling's happening.
Yeah. During COVID, my now 19-year-old, when everything shut down, he was a freshman. And so the whole rest of that school year, I was at home teaching on a computer. My then third grader was on a computer. My ninth grader was sometimes on a computer. It was just such a mess. And we saw the writing on the wall that at least high schoolers in our area were very unlikely to return the next year. So we had to kind of make a quick decision. And we moved he's now graduated, but we moved him for 10th grade to this same private school that my younger one. But at the time we were like, we can't necessarily afford to throw them both in there. So I was like, worst case scenario, I'm home teaching. I can help a third, fourth grader. But we've got to send this one to school. And I'm really, really glad we did. And the safety and the security of it to me was like a big part of it at the time. For his senior year, he chose to go back to public school.
Sure.
I let him make that decision. And it was kind of good because we knew that was my younger one's last year. So we're like, okay, we'll save for a year.
Just swap.
But then we just knew we're like middle school is just, and my kids are totally different. Like I didn't even consider private school for my older child. And it was pre-COVID. Things were just
better.
Yeah, they really were.
They were better.
They really were.
Yeah.
So anyway.
It's interesting. It's fun because I think you have an interesting perspective being a teacher and in the school system. So you kind of see both sides of it. So it's fun. I think it's probably also very hard.
It is
going through that.
It is. I mean, because when I say I know things, I also know things. You also are like, you think you picked the right teacher for your child or whatever, then you hear things that that other parents shouldn't know, or you hear that teachers say things about other students or something that you wish you didn't know. So
The
a
water
lot,
cooler
which is
talk.
wonderful. But, then there's a lot of things going on with the public schools right now in our area. It's North Carolina. I moved here because of the education system, had a fabulous
Yeah.
reputation. It does not. Teachers are not paid well.
Not, yeah.
I happen to work at an amazing school. I have great admin. I work around great teachers, which is why I kept my son here. But it's weird because I keep an ear tuned in because it affects me. And I'm just so glad it's not affecting my children. Like, it just makes me sad for like some of my students that have to deal with some of these things. Or, I'm like, we've got a problem with our bus drivers are paid like $15, $16 an hour. With a horrible, like every day, there's buses that are late. This bus is going to be an hour late. Of course, parents, not all parents can just leave work and give their kid a ride home from school. That's why they have bus transportation.
Yeah.
So I see some of these things and I just am thinking, it's so interesting to be in both roles where you're tuning in because it affects you and your students. And I'm just so thankful when I get some of those phone calls about a lockdown at a school, or the metal detectors being moved around from school to school, or so-and-so had a gun or a knife or whatever. And I'm fully aware it could happen at a private school, fully aware. I do not think that's, but it's a closed campus. And that's what I started to say about, that was so interesting. Sorry, I kind of had lost my train of thought about why we moved my son there. One of the things they said to me when I was interviewing to go there, they're like, we like to keep it's pre-K to 12. And they're like, we really pride ourselves on, we've been able to keep it around 750, 800. And we like that because that school is now almost 1,000. So in the 3 years since my son was there, and they were taking pride in keeping it a small school, which that didn't matter to me. It's a huge school. They've got wonderful educators. But I just find it interesting that almost 250 students later, and a huge part of those enter, lucky for my son, they add a group in 6th grade. Because they know that's where the exit is. That's where everybody wants to get out. So they always have like 2 classes, 2-1, 2-3, 2-4, 5. And then all of a sudden in 6th grade, they go from like 42, 44 kids to like 60. And then I think in 7th grade, which he's in the upper school now, it's like 75 or 80. Still very, very small.
Yeah.
Comparatively. But
shows,
the exit that has been made from the public schools really, really makes me sad. And in North Carolina, there's a huge debate over, and I don't know where it stands right now. I think our governor had 10 days to sign a bill. They wanted to do voucher program, opportunity scholarship, giving money to parents who have taken their children to private school. And of course, I'm going to have mixed emotions. I'm in a public school. I want the money to go to public schools. And I feel like the money should be a per student thing. So I feel like even if you're putting money in the private schools, you should still be putting the same amount of money in public schools. And those of us who, but I think there's, of course, the debate is all these wealthy parents. We're not all wealthy parents just because we want a safe, nurturing, in this case, a Christian environment that doesn't make you wealthy. And they're making 6 figures. It's like, because some of them, it used to be that there was a pretty low income cap and they took the cap off of it this year. That was the big debate.
Gotcha.
So it could be somebody making $800,000, but that's really different than somebody making $99,500, or $100,000. So that's a big debate here. So I really have not only like being a parent of a public school and private school over the years, and then being a parent of both of those, and then being in the public school, I have all kinds of views. So, I bet it's a mixed bag. It really is. And I'll be honest, what you said about it kind of being, it's not everybody wealthy. It really shows kind of a culture shift and this evolution of what teaching is becoming, because me and my wife, we are not the rich people, but we would love to do private school, but that might mean we're working 2 or 3 jobs.
but parents are making that
Sacrifices.
sacrifice.
Absolutely.
Because
Are yours all elementary?
yeah, so I have actually he's in preschool and then first grade and third grade.
Okay.
So we're starting to get on we were talking about next year even being the year that we do the homeschooling.
Okay.
Just because there's some social aspects. My oldest son that he's coming home with some stuff that's a little bit inappropriate, and it's not necessarily from the teacher aspect. It's the students and stuff, but it's in our school. There's not enough teachers and educators to kind of be on top of that.
Right.
That now my son is bringing some of that home, and we're kind of like we shouldn't be introducing that stuff until later. So it's been an interesting thing, and I'm actually very appreciative to be able to do these conversations because it seems like I'm not the only one in that boat, but also I haven't heard anything from teachers such as yourself about where teaching is going. And Emily and I, we actually had the conversation yesterday that teaching might, and schools themselves, public schools really might just become this a facility that teachers can sit in and help students go to different ChatGPT or AI things that are teaching the curriculums. And that might be easier because some parents need to be able to send their kids somewhere.
Absolutely.
But also we don't necessarily, I'm not an educator, right? But I do feel confident that I could teach my kids in some way, shape, or form because of all the tooling that's out there. So,
but yeah, out of necessity, that may become, and in North Carolina, I mean, it definitely feels like our General Assembly is trying to get rid of the public schools, whether they're, whether it's through these vouchers, whether it's the way they're treating teachers, the behaviors that they're allowing in the schools. And it just may be out of necessity that there will not be enough teachers. And I really think if it hadn't been for like 2009, like when the housing market crashed and stocks crashed and everything, I think there'd be a whole lot less teachers than there are. I think teachers are having to stay so much longer than they intended. And I don't know if you read in my thing, like people who started teaching in North Carolina after 2006 aren't even offered retirement.
I think that I saw that, and I have a note here to bring it up. I'm glad you did. That is crazy. That's absurd to me.
It's mind-blowing. There's no, I mean, now, let me say, I mean, I think there are still some, like you might feed into retirement and have a couple $100 checked depending on how long you stay. But as far as like I'm eligible, like when I started, after 5 years of being invested for 5 years, when I turn 65, I will have health care for the rest of my life. Yeah.
There's the incentive. And what I'm hearing is the package might look a little bit different, but it's nowhere near what someone like you might have.
And I love, it's so funny because like you said, things are the same all over when you watch, I follow all kinds of teachers that are comedians or do memes or discussions and stuff. And I love how there's like his guy's like, remember your why, healthcare. Yeah. It's healthcare.
Yeah.
Like
Every time.
That's not what it used to be. It used to be, we're trying to help our students grow and learn. And of course, he's just kidding. But I mean, really, that's for a huge part of population. I mean, my husband's been with a company for 23 years, and the day he walks out the door, he will not have health care. That's a huge crazy part of why people work. And for teachers, that's always been teacher retirement. People say, oh, you have your summers off and you only have to work for, 25, 30 years and you're 52 and you can be done. But they're slowly taking that away. So
it seems like there's almost on the other side, some third party saying the incentive is to make sure there's less teachers, which is, it's crazy. So let me ask this, because this is something that I saw at the beginning of the year for my kids, excuse me. At their schools, there was a big outcry that there's a lack of teachers and the teacher retention rate is awful. Emily assures me that's not the case. And it looks like it in a little bit of investigation that's not necessarily the case, but it seems like a lot of teachers that I've talked to, they're coming into this field to help bring students up, and kind of the future minds are in their hands. And it's a fantastic role to be in, but they're not getting to do that. A buddy of mine was saying a lot of it is, he was a teacher not too long ago, and he left because it's all about the data points. I talked with this kid, I was able to test this kid, and on average, we're testing at this point. Everyone who's testing below that, we'll try and bring them up, but we've got our data. Is that something that you face as well? Do you think that's part of, not just on the incentive side for retirement, but even coming into the field? Do you think that's something that is making teachers shy away
That
from
the focus
being
is
teachers?
data.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge, I mean, luckily I'm in a school where my administrators and the teachers that I'm with, there's a big push always of, nurturing
Sure.
the whole student,
Yeah.
recognizing that you should be at the door to your classroom when the kids come in, and you should make sure that every child hears their name right away, because we know that not every child has had a conversation that morning, has been loved on if that's what they want. Some teachers do, a certain handshake when they come in, give them a hug, pat them on the back, but at least say their name, So we've got a big push for that. I'm fortunate, if you saw, I've stayed in K1 and 2, and that is very intentional, because 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, as soon as they start with the testing grades, I think that is a pretty general feeling with a lot of teachers, not school specific, but everywhere, that get that data, do the testing.
Yeah.
Your EVOS score, which is, like a teacher score. I don't know if that's, I don't know if that's an everywhere thing or a North Carolina thing.
I've not heard it in Connecticut.
So it's like an evaluation tool. You have like that's what you're based on. You're based on your scores. Luckily, for the most part, it's growth rather than necessarily expecting everybody to be at the same point.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, and I know Emily's a data person, the funny thing is, data, how are they doing? How have they grown? I think the scariest part now is, what do they do with the data? Not much. You put them in the next grade,
just
and
keep pushing it
then
along.
they're just going to continue to struggle. And that's what's so frightening, that it's when COVID hit, I was at home with my 3rd grader, and I got to see what he knew. There was no talk of retaining him. I knew that he had struggled. I knew that he had some struggles, especially with math. He's a great reader, can comprehend, really struggled in math. And when I thought that we may not go back to school the next year, or I may be doing it at home while I'm sitting here teaching like this, I made the decision to hold him back. And I think the only reason I was taken seriously is because I was an educator, because our school system doesn't want to do it because it's money. Every year a child is in school is more money. If you have even though it's not good in North Carolina, it's an extra whatever, because now they're in school for 14 years instead of 13 with kindergarten. So if I wasn't an educator, I don't know that they will, because even when our educators are saying this child is not ready, they're going to struggle, we're setting them up for failure, because after K1, 2, 3 was even a stretch, it's really hard, because you're not getting, those foundations have to be really, really strong. So that's my real concern, is that yes, data is a real push. We're very concerned about whether kids have grown and whether they're meeting marks based on male, female, where they're from, what language they speak. But if we're not going to do anything with it, and I know that there's also a lot of data that says, and a lot of proof, that retention doesn't work for every kid.
Sure.
And there is a certain amount you can catch up a kid. We're not trying to retain a child who is 6, 8, 10 weeks behind. We're talking about children who are coming to 1st grade still not knowing their letter sounds. And 1st grade, that used to be fine when I was in school. But now, when you've got a good part of the class reading, it's very hard for 1, possibly 2 people in the classroom to.
Yeah. Well, it takes the focus also, the teacher's focus has to be split between 3 different scenarios there then. And that's really just not doable. That's not manageable. Especially because at least I feel it this way, is that classrooms have grown in size. quite frequently they keep getting more and more students in a single classroom.
Right.
So I don't think that's realistic, and you're putting a lot on a teacher for that. And I get it. It's nice to have the data to look at stuff, and you can make different claims and back them up. But from what it sounds like you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is that also kind of is taking away from the fact that a child is going to hear their name in the morning, and you're going to have that personal relationship.
Yeah.
Which that's rough. Again, like you mentioned, some kids are really going there and they're getting away from not a great environment,
right.
or they just really haven't talked to their parents yet, and they need to have that conversation to wake up and feel loved.
Right. And we want to do all of that stuff. That's the kind of stuff that's the kind of stuff that we know really, really matters. We know that teachers aren't just spewers of information, facilitator. We are facilitators of information, but especially in the younger grades. Well, I shouldn't even say especially, because it's really, really scary the way some of these high schoolers come to school feeling. Which is why, not only for his education, because obviously education means everything to me, but when I moved my son during COVID to a private school too, was I knew, and I, certainly heard the stories after, but I guess it just, what it did to them, what it did to some students to have 2 years or, 18 months of not having those connections with peers, with other adults. Especially kids who were getting ready to go off to college, having had 2 years where they weren't building those relationships and growing. And gosh, you change so much at 16, 17, 18 years old.
Oh, yeah.
So the whole gamut of these kids just making connections is a huge part of it. And they are trying to bring in things like social emotional learning, which I know gets a bad rap. And for us, social emotional learning is like sharing and building other people up and helping somebody up when they fall or drop something or whatever, not what people are trying to make into it. Like I said, that teachers are here. I'm like, believe me, if I could brainwash a kid, I would make sure they knew how to read and had number sense, not.
My kids would clean their rooms.
Yeah. It would not be whatever my political views or my views on, other things around the world. So
I think that's the outlier. And the reason I say that is thankfully, the one good thing from COVID is I've learned to do my own research. I think the news outlets out there are spewing, this is fire alarms are going everywhere. Teachers don't have time for that. Some of them might, but that's the outlier, and that's dealt with within the community, I think. But I think that social emotional learning is a fantastic thing. A little personal story. My son, Caleb, my oldest, he's in 3rd grade now. He had trouble with self-control. He would go into school and he'd have these tantrums, and I was in the principal's office with him, I think, every other day up until about 2nd grade. It started dying down, but he had started seeing the school psychologist biweekly, and then as the tantrums came up and stuff. And I have to say, in 3rd grade now, I haven't had a phone call, and he's just this very nice, polite boy. And somewhere I missed it as a parent, not helping him with that, I think, but having someone else even to talk to that isn't mom and dad for kids, even if they come from a loving home, I think is amazing. I think that's something that should 100% and wholeheartedly be taught in school. Yeah. Just how to deal with other people that you're not going to deal with all the time, but you have to learn to live with.
Right.
Is fantastic.
Because we do laugh as teachers when we say things to parents sometimes, and it's like, well, we don't see that at school, or we don't see that at home. But there's going to be a lot of things that if you have an only child, or you have a boy and a girl, and then they get to school and there's competition between other boys or other girls, or somebody has different views or whatever. Dealing with what you deal with at home is totally different than what you deal. And you're not getting the attention. The kids have to understand after a while they're not going to get the kind of attention that they're going to get at home. So it is two very different worlds. And it's funny because both of my boys are boisterous, talkers, impulsive. And I would get emails, especially about my younger one, who's now a 7th grader, like, oh, Andrew is just so, quiet. We're trying to get him to come out of his shell. And I'm like, Andrew Milburn, it's so funny. They really are. They can be totally different creatures dependent on their where they are. So
yeah,
we learn a lot from parents, and that's why we try to. That's why one of the things that is just, we really have to work. Teachers and parents, it's so important to work together because parents, of course, know their child better than anybody else, and they can be such a huge help to us, the greatest resource to tell us, oh, that's because this happened, or this happened this morning. And I used to always, when I was the only teacher in the class, when I had my own classroom, I'm a resource teacher now, but when I had my own classroom, that was one of the things I would just beg of my parents. If the dog gets out in the morning before they go to school and gets away, and then you put your kid on the bus, their whole day is ruined because they think their dog's gone. Text me and say, we found the dog, or text me and say, Grandma's doctor appointment went fine. I'm not trying to be nosy, but the more that I can put your child's mind at ease about certain things, or if I can't put their mind at ease because it really is bad news, I need to know that too. We really need, it's so important to have a partnership. And if parents are going through a divorce, or grandma passed, or whatever, they cannot, we can't shut that off. I can't come to school and teach like I didn't just lose an aunt or whatever. And I might tell my kids that I'm having a sad day. And that's, and that's okay. Cause we're, hopefully kind of have developed sort of like a family, in the classroom. So I think that's a huge important part of making sure, and that parents kind of, we always say, you believe about 20% of what they tell you, and I'll believe about 20%, without checking. So.
Yeah. So let me ask, if as a parent, what would your message to me be if you had to give me like a single tip, the best tip to being that team? Is it just texting and being communicative, or is it showing up at the class? Is it reinforcing what you might be sending back? We're trying to teach sharing. Let's try that at home as well. What could someone like me do at home to make the child's life and the teacher's life better?
Yeah, I think probably, as far as first what you said about, is it going in or is it reiterating stuff at home or whatever, it's really whatever every parent can do. Whatever, if you're the parent that, if mom is off on Tuesdays and one Tuesday a month, she can go sit and eat lunch with the kid, or, go in and volunteer. And like we have parents sometimes that come in, we have what's called Tuesday folders where we send everything home, and parents come in and they do that. And then maybe they'll stay and eat with their child.
That's awesome.
We have parents that say, I can never come in because the hours I work. And that's me. I mean, teachers understand. We can't come to our kids, when I'm so sorry I work.
You're at school.
We do too. And I don't just leave. I mean, yes, I get to see my child when he went here a whole lot more than somebody who's working at a bank. But I can't just, everybody's coming for lunch today, Mom, or everybody's coming to my party. Well, I'm having a holiday party too, or, I can't come at that time. So we're working parents too. If you're talking to a teacher, they're a working parent. Whatever it is. So parents might say, is there anything you need cut out or glued or printed and cut out, or even if it's just, I got an email from your teacher today and I found out that you did this that was really good, or you did this that, they weren't real proud of, and the point is just that the child, and almost every time that I have a conference, if the child doesn't come with the parent, and sometimes they'll come with the parent, we'll put headphones on and, play something or sit right out in the hall where we can see them, because we want to have some conversations without the child. But the main message that I always want, whether it's a phone call, and sometimes on a phone call, I'll ask to speak to the child at the end, or I will tell the child the next day they come in, what I want them to know is that mom and dad or grandma or aunt and uncle, whoever your grown-up is, we're working together. And me having a conference with your parent or your adult is not me against you or us against you. It's a team of three. And that takes you working, your adults working, me working to be a team. So whatever that can be, whether it's just cutting stuff out, saying your teacher's really busy and she works really hard, and I'm going to do this for her to support her. And the flip side of that is the worst thing a parent can do is that teacher doesn't know what she's talking about. Don't listen to what she says. You don't have to do that. I've had kids tell me that over the years. My mom said, I don't have to listen to anything you say because you're not my mom. I've lost them for the year because I know they know they don't have to listen to me. And I know calling the parent's not going to help because the child has just told
there's
me
no support.
That there's no support. So whatever it looks like for every different parent, it's just, I think as long as a child knows that they're in a team of parent, teacher, child, then they feel supported, and that the only reason we're even talking is because we want the best for that child.
The child. Yeah. No, that's amazing. That's even the little things then.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing.
Absolutely.
So I should have asked this earlier too. So can you take me through you said you're a resource teacher. I think I understand what that means, but for when we upload this, could you just take us through a quick day in the life?
So at the beginning of the school year, all of the data that they get, all of that, all important data, all the testing, we have, there's a kind of a group of us, a team of us that look at all of that by grade level. I'm taking about the lowest 5% in each class.
Okay.
And I'm reading. We have a math resource teacher. There's actually two of us that are doing reading resources. First grade this year all the way through fifth grade. We used to have somebody dedicated to fifth grade last year, but once all the ESSER funds, all the COVID money went away, a lot of the money and a lot of the people went away. So our load jumped up. This is not a district assigned position. This is my principal put an extra couple people in classrooms
key portion
and spoke to the teachers and said, if you want Amy and Terry to stay, to do this another year, how does this look to you now that we did it last year? Is this something you guys want? I do their intervention. I do the interventions, meaning the teaching part of it, but then also help them progress monitor, like that I'm seeing growth, help them with the data. And I think at least I'm assuming since I have a job again this year, they were like, yes, we need this. So what we're kind of working with the students what we need, what is called intensive support. Probably what we try to meet is 40 minutes a week. There's no way that the teacher can, on a normal, ongoing basis, pull a child over and work with them for 20 minutes straight. And the groups that I put together are needing that same. So if I pull fourth graders, I might pull 3 groups of fourth graders. Some are still needing phonics. Some are still, still needing intense, higher level
foundational.
Phonics. Some are needing fluency. So they're reading, but it's super choppy. And then I've got some who can read, but they couldn't tell you, it'd be like me reading a book in Spanish. I can read it all, but I'm not going to tell you a thing. So we've got the gamut in one classroom. And that's why it's also impossible for a fourth grade teacher to teach letter sounds and teach how to, she's teaching all of it, but she can't sit. She's teaching the comprehension piece of it, but these students are behind or they're really far behind, like phonics. So I'm doing that all the way from first grade, where I'm still working on students that don't know all their letter sounds or their short vowel sounds, things like that.
Sure.
All the way up. So, and I just pull in groups of 3 or 4 all day long for about 20 minutes. And then that guarantees that throughout in a quarter, kids are getting hours and hours of extra help. So it's a delicate, it's definitely a game of scheduling is just because I feel bad that their doors are revolving. Usually the kids who are really low in reading are probably also being pulled for math. A lot of them might be also being pulled for, this is their second language. They might be pulled for EC services, meaning exceptional children, they have, some sort of learning disability that I'm not, qualified to teach them with. So that's what I do. And I work, I'm 20 hours a week. So I just work part-time. So I absolutely love it. I've been an assistant for years. While my son Andrew went here, I was an assistant. So why not? I came every morning and I came every afternoon. So I took this job that was paid like a bus driver, even though I had a teaching degree, maintained my teaching license and certificate and all that. Just renewed that last year. So that way I could still, and I think Emily and I talked about this in 23, June of 23, when Andrew left 5th grade, I was gone.
Sure.
I was like, I'm done. I can't do this. I quit. And because being an assistant I loved the teachers I worked with, but it ends up, we're just kind of become grunt workers of, car line, standing out in the hot sun and all kinds of stuff like that. So I was done. And then this position came available. My principal was like, it's, part-time, but you're paid on the teacher pay scale. And I also couldn't work here because I was taking Andrew to school, which was a different time. Like I had to be here 30 minutes before I could drop him off and everything. So to me, this has just been, it's just one of those things that it happened for a reason. I quit when I did for a reason. This position opened for a reason. I'm absolutely loving it. I love reading. Has always been I was what we called a primary reading teacher for years while my oldest was in elementary school, where you're still there 50% of the day, but usually in like 2 different classrooms. So I had never really taught 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade like I'm doing now.
Gotcha.
So anyway, that's my day.
That's awesome. Yeah. It sounds like quite the day, a quite busy day.
It is busy. I love it.
But it's amazing because the theme I keep hearing come up from you, in my mind, is that you're not there for the money. You're helping kids. And my wife is a nurse, and my family is very medically inclined, but we have a saying in our family that the foundation of our entire society is teachers and people in the administration for teaching and getting kids prepared, and nurses. They're the 2 professions that really just keep the society moving.
Yep.
So it's amazing to hear from someone like you. It comes across very clearly that you care about the kids that you're teaching.
Well, thank you. I really do.
And
I love that Emily has such it just blows my mind that her age, that she is just still, this is what she wants her legacy to be, is making improvements in education. I mean, with my husband's grandma, which is Emily's mom, my husband's great grandma being teachers, and then several of us, in the family being teachers. And I don't get a chance to be around Emily very often, but I keep so it's my husband's sister and Emily are sisters. Gotcha. I mean, my husband's mom is Emily's sister.
Yeah.
And so, I hear from them what she's doing and everything. And we knew when she had kind of gotten out of Teach Now, and we're like, oh, that's so great. She's going to sort of, settle in. We should have known that.
Hang back and no, she's still fighting.
Did you need money? I mean, it's just she just really, truly, again, she has done on the total opposite end of the spectrum. She's not doing it for the money, that's not why she's doing it. Like, oh, I got to, pay those bills. She just truly she
cares,
knows that, yes, education, and talking about in other countries too, we're all having the same struggles. It's a fight. We have the same reasons that we do it. But she just really, I love that she's just relentless in the pursuit of, there's so much room for improvement.
Yeah. So talking about Emily, she'll kill me if I don't bring this up and ask you this question. So in the perfect world, if you could kind of either start over or going forward in 5-10 years time, what do you think that the education system kind of should look like and teaching? Do you think that it's going to continue with public schools? Do we fix that? Or should there be a huge surge to micro schools? Is there something else that you have in mind that we could venture down?
So I don't know a whole lot about the micro schools. I kind of get the idea of I have a friend that lives out in kind of like the Silicon Valley area. And that's kind of something that I've seen her post about where, in that area.
I can high level the micro schools in this area anyway is it's the co-ops. It's parents, it's teachers who are leaving the schools and they're starting their own kind of homeschooling curriculum. And they're going online, they're buying the materials and stuff through these programs, the homeschooling programs. But the big thing I think as a parent, the struggle is I want my kids to still be socialized. I want them to get that diversity and working with people that they might butt heads with. And so micro schools and the co-op homeschooling is it's essentially the best of public school. They're going to go and get educated from people who are certified to do so,
Right.
but they're still socializing, and it's a smaller classroom. They're going to get kind of the one-on-one and the group needs met, while still getting the security and safety parents want. So,
well, I think we've figured out during COVID that, isn't it funny how COVID just really defines all of our lives now? I mean, we just found out so much about who we were and what we depended on, but we really found out that so millions and millions and millions of people depend on it, if for nothing else, daycare. Yeah. And I don't mean that like in a negative way. I mean, something like private schools, home schools, micro schools, co-ops, all of that depends on a certain amount of wealth.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't have, I mean, even me, I go to school. I mean, I come here and I still get to do what I want, which is the teaching, but I'm getting paid for it. And, you know, like if I all of a sudden just decided to homeschool my child,
that's income out the door.
That's income that I'm not making. So, and the fact that I have the option to send them to the private school already, you know, I mean, I know a step above or different than many, many, many people do not have that option. So I think that the future of education, you know, whether it's more people moving into homeschool and micro schools and private schools or whatever, I think it's going to look really, really different, unfortunately, based upon financial situations. And I think it's kind of, you know, it used to be everybody was in public school. I mean, everybody was in the public school. We trusted the public schools. Yeah. People trusted teachers. Teachers were more respected. Moms were staying home. I mean, my mom had a part-time job at a bank when I was growing up, and she could take a day off and go on a field trip or whatever. And when I got on that bus, my mom was walking me to the bus stop, and mom was waiting at the door when I got home. Even though she worked, she made sure that she could, you know, be. But with as many single-parent families and, you know, low-income families, which that gap just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, I think it's going to look so different. And unfortunately, you know, if teachers are the ones leaving to do these micro schools, you know, we're taking our expertise and our knowledge and our spewing of facts, you know, and even our nurturing, you know, away from the population that may need it most. That is not to say, because I wouldn't want it to ever go saying that that nurturing and caring and wanting the best for your child comes with your money situation. I do not mean that in any way. But I just mean if you leave it to, if all that's left in the public schools are the people that don't have an alternative, you know, that's a little scary. But I don't see how I think a lot of people's financial situation is not as good, you know, as it's been in the past. I mean, everything is so darn expensive. There's probably people who, you know, had planned to stay home or maybe homeschooled or whatever, or maybe sent their kids to a private school or whatever, and people are just not able to do that. So I really, I mean, in a perfect world, I would love to see some way that we could get our public schools back to what we all wish they were, which was, you know, teachers are respected. There's our school system has school choice. We have school choice in our I'm sorry, what did you start to say?
No, I was just going to say it sounds really like it. I almost want to equate this to my marriage with my wife. And when we're dealing with the children, we never want to undercut the other one. Even if we don't agree, there's a respectful way to do it and away from the children. And it seems like we need to bring that back to the school system, and families need to have that with the teachers and the administration. and we need to be focusing on the child and making sure they're getting what they need out of it and helping each other. And the three-way team, right? Child,
Yep.
teacher, family. And so in the perfect world, if I can kind of pare it back a little bit, the perfect world, we can get teachers being respected and kids showing respect to the teachers and parents being involved. It sounds like from your perspective, parents being involved is going to help. And then financially, I'm not a financial expert, but I know that raising 3 kids nowadays is like raising 10 back in the day.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's a fight we'll have to battle some other way. But
yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I don't know exactly how we get there. That's what's just so scary. I think that bad teachers have given the teaching profession as a whole, I think there's a bad rap for the people who believe what they see, what they hear in the media. I mean, it's on the news every day, a teacher taking indecent liberties with a child or being inappropriate. I think our world is just a whole lot more deviant than it was, or maybe just because of the internet and the news and news being in your face all the time. I'm sure it has happened all of our lives, but it's out there now and it's scarier. And that's another thing that I don't pretend to think doesn't happen at a private school.
Yeah, no, it's everywhere, but one bad egg does set the standard.
Yes. And then, I definitely think there's a whole lot less parent involvement than there used to be. Like I said, I mean, and I don't necessarily mean the field trip or coming in and volunteering or coming to lunch all the time, but just having that mutual respect for teacher. And when the teacher calls, pick up the phone. I mean, one of our SIT goals, our school improvement team goals this year and last year, is my principal started asking every single teacher before open house to call and just make that first positive one-on-one connection with the parent. I think most teachers probably got, and I understand. I mean, now the thing is, people don't even pick up their phone if they don't recognize the number. So a lot of times was that. But even if they would have said, call me back if I'm here at the school today, parents, it's, I think, especially if a parent was not a strong student, or if the parent feels like the teacher is above them in some way, not that the teachers but some people kind of feel like, I don't want this teacher to judge my vocabulary or to judge the way I parent or to judge the fact that my child is struggling. So sometimes it's easier to just not not allow that connection, or to accuse the teacher of, and that's why we wanted the positive phone calls. Then then everybody was supposed to make another positive phone call after this first week of this first month. Make another call. Let the parents know. Base. Because when the phone rings, we don't want it to always be like, oh, girl, it's the school calling. It's not always, it should not always be a bad thing. But everybody gets busy. Life is busy. It's hard sometimes for teachers to always be making those connections. And sometimes it really feels like pulling teeth, one-sided.
Well, it's not for nothing, society keeps piling on to teachers. The next and the phone calls, not that it's a bad thing, but again, like you said, everyone gets busy, and that includes teachers. They're dealing with an entire classroom of students, not just your child.
Right.
But I do enjoy that. I know in my school, I was in the principal's office every other day with my son, so I kind of got to the habit, oh no, it's the school district, I don't want to pick up. And I was that bad student, so I see the phone calls, I'm like, oh no. But they started actually last year. We have like a text messaging app where the teachers can just reach directly out,
like Remind or something.
Yeah, I think it's like School Messenger, Messenger or something. But it's fantastic because I can look at it and I pre-screen it. I'm not in trouble. My kid's not in trouble. We can go and we can deal with this. But it's helped a lot because they are sending your son did something and we're very proud of him today. Talk about it at the dinner table if you can. It was just really blow that up, and it's been fantastic. So I agree.
Well,
I
open
think stuff
communication,
like
both, and like I was saying earlier, parents telling us what's going on in their kids' life, us telling us, good things. And then that way the bad things aren't all that parents hear.
Yeah.
But,
it helps.
And then really supporting teachers when that kind of stuff happens. There's a lot of times we get a lot of excuses or, usually how the parent handles it makes it, a lot of times it's like, that's why this is happening. Like
Yeah.
there's no,
Yeah.
accountability. They're not making them, pay for their actions, whether that's, whatever that may
It's
be, like, well, he's
timeout
not going to get to
or
go to the movies tonight or whatever. But
yeah.
you call or send a note home 3 times in a week. And then they're like, we're doing this tonight, or we did this weekend. And you're like, they're not going to learn,
It doesn't stick. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm not even, I won't lie to you. That's something that I had to learn. We were very bad because me and my wife both were working at the time. The iPads. If parents ever watch this, never get your kid an iPad. Don't use that as the filler. We had the iPads because I worked from home and I needed sometimes to take meetings for work. And the iPad was, Caleb, my oldest Caleb, go sit down, sit on this, watch some YouTube for a little bit. I'll do this. And then we'll go back. And when it came down to the punishment, it was, we'll take the iPad away. That was the punishment. But then I'm in a meeting and now I'm being punished for it. And so now I have to give it back to him because this is important because I need to pay the bills.
Right.
And when we finally managed to work stuff out and we were able to stick and follow through with punishments and stuff, and that sometimes that punishment is a 5-minute timeout. Just go sit in the corner or go apologize. Just take some responsibility and accountability for what you did and apologize. It's been night and day. It really has. With behavior and everything, it's just been fantastic. So I think that if I can say, I think communities fell apart, especially with COVID. Communities and communication fell apart. And I remember introducing myself not even introducing, I would say hi to people that I was walking past with their kids, and our kids are in the same class. And hey, how's it going? And then you brush them off and you forget who they are. And I caught myself one day and I introduced myself to this woman I walked past. And I was like, you know what? COVID really screwed me up here. I should have told you, my name's Chris. My son Caleb is in your classroom. Who are you? Should we, do you want to get together one day and have a play date? And I think a lot of people, I think maybe it is the judgment, but a lot of people have trouble doing something like that. I think I had trouble. I was embarrassed to do it, but I was like, again, for my son, I have to do this. Yeah. This is something we need to introduce, and we need to start having these conversations like what we're doing now and building the community. Schools used to be such a great community. Most of my friends growing up were through the school, and my parents made friends through me and my siblings going to school. And now it really is this like valve that was shut off. No one is talking to each other anymore. And when it is, we're butting heads, and like you said, oh, don't bother with what the teacher said. We know better. Right. And whatnot. And that's awful. That's just an awful thing to do.
Right. It sets the teacher up for failure and your child. Because I think we can all admit that even if you don't love the teacher or love the teacher's style or whatever, it's really important for your child to be listening to them when they're there all day long. Otherwise, it's just a huge waste of time.
Oh, yeah. And I've had bosses I didn't like. I still have to do the work. So it's one of those things. It's a learning environment. You might not like what they're doing, but the content that's coming to you, you still need to get it in your own way and figure it out.
It's an important it's an important relationship, whether you like it or not. You've got to. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a battle. But I think, and we're coming up on time here, so I do want to give a shout out to this. We are starting a community. We're hoping to start a community. The podcast is kind of our funnel. We're going to bring people on such as yourself, and hopefully have you, and you can word of mouth. All of the teachers are invited, and anyone invested in education is invited. We're going to be starting it's a text community. Where we're going to be posting videos like this, but we really want to get teachers talking. We want to get teachers talking, hopefully get some parents in there, and really start building the community back up in a positive way. The negative stuff might come, and we want to squash that. We want this to be positive and happy. Right. So I can send the invite. I can share it. You can share it around with whoever you think is interested or would be interested.
Absolutely. That's a big part of my community. The friends that I've made over the year, and the connections that I've made at the different educators over the years of teaching. That's a big part of who I know and trust and spend my time with. So I'd be happy to share it, of course.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. So, do you have any last messages you'd like to shout out here?
No, I think that's it. I think main thing I just want to say is, I guess, just. I do think I don't want to make it sound like getting back to schools being a wonderful place is really all that far out of reach. I think there's a lot of schools that are, I mean, I'm lucky enough to teach in one that is just a great place to be every day. I think it's just, like you said, if we can just kind of develop a little more trust and a little more community, I think we can kind of get back to the way that I don't want to say the way it used to be. I know things are changing. I know it's going to look really different, but we can get back to public schools being a really great place and build up the morale of teachers, because it really is building up the morale of teachers and students makes a big difference. That when people feel like they're appreciated and that people are glad that they're wherever they are.
Yeah. It makes it worth it. It makes it that much more worth it.
It really does.
So
it does.
I totally understand that. I hope we can support in that manner. And so the next 5 to 10 years of education is in a positive light.
I hope so. I hope so.
So awesome. Amy, thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure meeting you.
You too, Chris. And, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Of course. I hope that we get to chat again.
I'd love that. I'd love that. You take care of yourself, and I hope that you and your family have a great school year.
Awesome. Thank you. You as well.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.